Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
On the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
All right, so finally, we're back. Took a little while, but apparently...
Did we have a podcast last week?
No, we didn't.
Oh, no. So, yeah, we're back. No wonder.
Yeah.
We missed a whole week, dude. When was the last time we've done that? It's been a while.
It has been a while.
So, yeah, we have kind of like ended our streak of like banger interviews.
Yeah.
Which we would like to resume at some point, but man, we've been like more busy than usual.
Yeah.
With the NAT and DMT stuff and, you know, getting MetaZone kind of primed for this whole bitmap arena.
That's right.
There's a lot cooking in the back end for us.
Yeah. Speaking of cooking, the Ordinals ecosystem has been cooking, and there's been a lot of heat and censorship about.
Yeah, I mean, we heard these whispers, I guess, of this way back in fucking March timeframe, March, May, April, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whenever the first like spikes of ordinals occurred with BRC20 like release, and people were making like, I guess, like shadow threats amongst themselves, like the Bitcoin core devs.
Yeah, it was
Remember?
that and the laser eye Maxis.
Yeah. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't understand why they think the like Ordinals is such a threat to them.
well, dude, it's like a decade long ideology. Like we think that people can just kind of like strip away. It's this whole like, you know, they've watched the ecosystem development, I guess, proliferate like beyond the borders of Bitcoin and, you know, into Ethereum and all this other stuff kind of emerge, and they've kind of piggybacked.
So it's a battle of ideologies. You're saying it's like,
of course,
it's just people wanted digital gold, and now they're getting pictures.
Yeah, I guess like the digital gold narrative is just so easy. Like,
yeah,
it's so digestible, like for a large segment of people, which is good for if you're like a maxi. Your intention is get as many, you know, people to buy into your ideology, right? It's just like a whole massive cult.
I guess what I don't understand is like it's not mutually exclusive. It could be digital gold, right?
Yeah,
it's like little slivers of gold are being used to put pictures on it.
Right, but now you have all this new difficulty of education and explanation to the masses. So like, what is Bitcoin really now? Right?
Yeah. So do you think Ordinals is part of like that discussion? And like, hey, let me introduce you to Bitcoin. You know, here's blockchain and mining and all that stuff. And by the way, there's these things called Ordinals, these artifacts. Like that's part of you think that's like the part of like the explanation of Bitcoin now?
It has to be. Because when you're buying a Bitcoin, you're not just buying like an asset, you know, a digital asset, just to store your accrued wealth like that anymore, right? That was like the marketing pitch for Bitcoin for since I've been paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Right. But now it's like you're entering an actual like ecosystem that is like way more robust and has much more utility than just that. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, I do agree. Explaining ordinals to like the common person is going to be extremely complex.
Yeah, it's not just ordinals. It's like then you're going to have to go into GameFi and DeFi and the metaverse, and you have to explain everything. And Bitcoin is tied to everything now, which, from my perspective, is a huge W.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it's just like now it's just more friction, I guess, when it comes to like explanation. But at the end of the day, I think people, they don't need that much explanation, right? They're just gonna get attracted through like other natural means, just you know, organic interest, momentum in the space, just like what we saw with NFTs and such. People didn't know what NFTs and the technology behind Ethereum and all this stuff, proof of stake, proof of work.
That's
Do I really care about this migration? No, I'm attracted, I'm allured by the value of the products of this ecosystem, right?
Yeah. It's not like they knew that they were buying URL links.
No.
Right?
Nobody did. So I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, if that's all the maxis cared about, or maybe they have genuine
like concern for the network, which just seems weird. I mean, the more it's important to know that Bitcoin, in order to sustain itself, it needs velocity. Right. If it is a true like digital gold and it's like store of value, then you store your value and then you don't move it. Right. So how do you have velocity to sustain that network after post subsidy?
What do you mean by velocity?
Meaning movement of money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got to move the money in order to pay for the security of the network, right?
Yeah, I don't think gold gets moved around much.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's a store of value where it translates to no movement,
Correct.
then how do you sustain the network? Do you think the miners are just going to like keep the lights on, a charity?
Well, isn't like the argument supposed to be, yeah, whatever, the emissions get cut in half every 4 years and such, but isn't like the economics supposed to kind of kick in? Like that's the value of the token itself always has to mirror that
Well,
like emission cuts. That's why it's so easily predictable. Bitcoin just goes up forever to kind of like match that emission cut.
But
right?
but what about after 2140 though?
Well,
There's
yeah,
no emission.
I think that's so far into the future where you could disregard it at this point where we are today. That's more than 100 years. So
Yeah,
why fuck around with things today for a 100-year problem?
Yeah, but even if you were to follow your logic, it would have to double every 4 years, the value of Bitcoin.
Yeah, isn't that like part of like the ethos and expectations?
Well, if you do that, it would go to infinity in 100 years. You double every 4 years, like it would go to like astronomical numbers, which clearly is not possible.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, something is definitely not sustainable in that expectation. Again, like from my understanding, from the Maxis point of view, that's always been like their belief. Or like, we don't need to worry about fees. It's just the value of the Bitcoin is going to grow exponentially, and that's going to cover everyone's bills at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm getting fractions of a Bitcoin for securing this network, but
that's fraction is still hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Correct, and therefore my bills are paid. I'm still properly incentivized.
Yeah, I mean, I think the logic does work, but not for a while. Like it'll eventually not work.
That's one hell of a fucking like expectation to maintain.
Yeah,
because if anything happens from like a macro perspective that like puts a wrench in that expectation, whatever that trajectory, which I mean theoretically could happen, right? Maybe something of unseen catastrophe portions. I don't know. Yeah. All of a sudden, miners don't feel properly incentivized anymore because the value just kind of like grinded to a halt, right? Just in all markets potentially. I don't know.
Yeah, let's do a little test here, right?
So snap, we brought out the calculator, dude.
Yeah. So if you do, what is it? 2 to the 25. That's a $33 million Bitcoin when you do 100 years of like doubling.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen people say that's gonna happen. It's like I feel like people like the Maxi crowd is like, this is a certainty. You know what I mean?
All right. So then if that's a certainty, then we're talking about a valuation of let's multiply that by 18 million. And that number is
600 trillion.
$600 trillion.
Jesus Christ. It's basically like supplants the value of everything that's ever been evered. Like on Earth.
Yeah, 600 years trillion, from now. I think that's more than the derivatives market.
Right, but that's also 100 years into the future, right? I mean,
still.
Yeah, and I don't think everything's going to be pegged to like the value of a dollar by then. So it's like we're talking like super theoretical stuff, which I don't think it's fair to like account for the future that far into the future in any respect.
Well,
it's very difficult.
But it has to follow logic, right? If people are expecting the price to double for the next 100 years, it's not feasible.
Yeah, from my perspective, that again, that's just too grand of an expectation to set and like assume is going to carry on for the next 100 years. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you probably would have thought the same thing as like investing in stock or equities of American companies in the 1920s. There's no way for 100 years, like the value of the American economic engine is just going to only go up.
That's right.
But it actually did.
Yeah. Well, it goes up because of inflation. Your number is based on how many dollars are in circulation. If there's more dollars, the number is always higher, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, a lot of other, I guess, macro factors as well. Right. It's just, but yeah, I would say the same thing back then in the 1920s. Like, dude, that's one hell of a
expectation
of an assumption to make. You're gonna have 100-year runway of just.
Yeah, but I think it's reasonable only because there's an expansion of technology, right? And so there's creation of new value. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Bitcoin is creating new value just by having the subsidy.
It's just creating more scarcity, which has perceived value.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, assuming like the global economy continues to scale into the future, and then yeah, people are continually going to need to reallocate their wealth into, you know, distributed means.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I guess I could see a future maybe where this trend maintains. But again, these are very large assumptions to make.
Yeah, why can't we have both?
That's what I'm saying. I feel like it's safer to kind of like inject a little bit of like a buffer.
Yeah.
Like a buffer zone of like, you know, parallel assumptions, and that can kind of like reduce the risk a bit.
Yeah, why can't we rely on the market to decide, like, yeah, maybe people got overzealous with their pictures on Bitcoin, and everything is like no longer sustainable, and so people stop minting pictures and JSON data, right?
Yeah.
And because nobody cares, nobody wants it, right? So why not let the market decide? Like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think introducing new incentives beyond just Bitcoin it has to be a good thing, right? And we were seeing it. Miners now want, you know, things like bitmaps and such.
Yeah, not only that, it's getting people more involved into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you want, right?
Yes.
As a store of value, you want people to like get their hands on it.
Yeah, so this is obviously like, I think
I feel like if there was like an actual debate of
that's what I mean.
Of this, like they would get their asses handed to them.
I don't know, but I feel like these need to be had at the next major like Bitcoin conferences if possible. We need to have Maxis versus
it's like Peter Schiff always debating Bitcoin versus gold.
Yeah.
Like that was like a nonstop debate.
Correct.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built Mscribe, the first inscription platform built from the ground up for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Connect your bitmap ordinals and use our tools to bring your community into the virtual realm. Support us by joining the movement at mscribe.io. Like, comment, and subscribe for the latest alpha. Back to the video.
Yeah. So it's going to happen. This is going to be a persistent conversation. But at the end of the day, it's just talk. Well, actually, maybe not. Now there's actual action afoot. People trying to actually, you know, chink the armor of either side.
So, so we're talking about ideologies and comparing the ideologies and like its application in like the real world, right? With Bitcoin, right? And I think it's important to see like they are starting to move in that direction with censorship.
Yes.
And so I think it's a good time to talk about like the incentive structure of Bitcoin, right? If in general, on average, you make more money mining ordinal transactions because people are paying, you know, stupid amount of money for a picture, right? $100 for a transaction.
Yeah.
Right. You're incentivized as a miner to take that transaction and add it to the block.
As opposed to what? So what's happening here is there's like a push for censorship, right? There's a new division amongst these miners, right? I don't know how vast this division is, like how broad these tranches are, is like those in favor, those opposed.
Yeah.
I'm assuming those in favor is much of a larger like population.
Well, it is larger only because there's monetary incentives.
Right. So it's like, but if you decided to, I guess, because this guy, we're talking about Luke Dash Jr., right? This is the ocean mining guy?
Yeah, so let's read this tweet. So, public service announcement, inscriptions, in quote, he says, are exploiting a vulnerability in Bitcoin Core to spam the blockchain. Bitcoin Core has, since 2013, allowed users to set a limit on the size of extra data in transactions they relay or mine. By obfuscating their data as program code, inscriptions bypass this limit. This bug was recently fixed in Bitcoin Knots v25. It took longer than usual due to my workflow being severely disrupted at the end of the last year. And Bitcoin Core is still vulnerable in the upcoming v26. I can only hope it will finally get fixed before v27 next year. So this had 4.4 million views on Twitter.
Damn.
And we had a ton of people message us and ask us, is Ordinals over, right? Is it going to get eliminated? And so Luke, he's a CTO of Ocean Mining, and he contributes code, and that code is trying to censor ordinals.
Father of 8 children too, he says.
Yeah.
I can see why his workflow it got disrupted.
Yeah, right.
It's a lot of kids, dude.
That's right.
Yeah. So they're bringing about this mechanism, right? This method of basically pruning, I guess, the existence of these inscriptions.
A lot of this, like, this isn't enough information. I think it is important to kind of read people's comments and like Luke's reply. For what it's worth, this vulnerability has been assigned the identifier CVE 2023. So they submitted this vulnerability to the National Vulnerability Database. It has a full ID number in this database as like a recognized bug.
Okay.
So this is like.
So who pays attention to like to what parties of Earth is this database like pertinent information for? Like
I think it's
what
just
branches of government? Is there one?
Well, let's see. So it says NVD, which is the National Vulnerability Database, is a U.S. government repository of standards-based vulnerability management data represented using the Security Content Automation Protocol. This data enables automation of vulnerability management, security management, and compliance. The NVD includes databases of security checklists, references, security-related software flaws, product names, and impact metrics. So I think it's just like a national registry of like a vulnerability. So if you kind of look through here, it's like a vulnerability was found in Beijing, patrol flow. So it's like
these things get issued pretty frequently. It looks like.
Yeah, I think anybody can submit it. And,
yeah, look at that. Just like several a day.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is just like a national database of like vulnerabilities. I don't know for sure like what is the use of this.
Yeah, like no. It's not like this is setting like alarm bells in Joe Biden's like, office or anything like that, right? It's like Biden.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
It's like there's a vulnerability in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Like this isn't like setting off alarm bells really anyway, right? This is just like
no, I think this is like
publicly stating a gripe or like publicly stating just something is afoot. Amok.
It's like if you're running any one of these softwares, like if maybe you're running like one of these softwares for like a critical infrastructure, like you'd want to know that there's a vulnerability in critical infrastructure, right? And it needs to be propagated. Like you need to know this because otherwise something is at jeopardy.
Interesting.
And so that's probably the point of this. And
I wonder if this has ever happened on Ethereum, like some sort of vulnerability.
Well, when there's a vulnerability in like a cryptocurrency, it gets exploited and money like gets lost, and that's it.
And they're like, we don't need to report that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like nothing. Yeah. Like this is definitely like an overreach, I would say then, right? Like there's no real.
Yeah. This is like
not. There's nothing. That's nothing vulnerable, right?
No. This is more like an attack on the culture of like.
Okay.
Yeah, there's shots fired,
right?
Like officially,
like it's just like a hit piece. There's
trying
to build a narrative.
Yeah,
which I think is a worthy like strategy if you're a maxi.
Sure, absolutely.
It's like let's try and inject as many like icky like vectors to this inscription thing.
Yeah, I think we've talked about like a version of this is like to the like a regular person.
Yes,
they hear about Bitcoin. It's like, oh, there's a vulnerability. It's like interesting, and it's like nationally registered. It's like, okay, cool.
Well, yeah.
It's like, well, maybe I shouldn't buy any Bitcoin because there's a vulnerability.
Yeah, potential one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, well, then that would be hurting themselves, though. Why would they do that?
Exactly.
They wouldn't. I don't. That can't be the motive. Then it's got to be like.
I think it's an attack on culture because I think.
Is this a potential like prelude to like a fork? Maybe.
Yeah, but okay, so let's play that out. So let's assume it does happen, a fork, right?
It's like they're putting together like the pieces of a narrative potentially. It's like, all right, we're the only real feasible way to kind of like actually defeat inscriptions, is to fork, right, and create this clean line of Bitcoin that does not allow this to happen.
It would be a fork because miners would have to decide which software to run. Right. Which chain they're going to like set their data servers to. Correct.
And then you'd have competing narratives, right? It's like we're the true Bitcoin, we're clean.
Yeah.
We're no longer soiled by all these fucking spam attacks.
Monkey pictures.
Yeah. And therefore you institutional investors, you know that ETF you've been fighting for all these years? You haven't been fighting for monkey pictures.
That's right.
You've been fighting for sound boomer bucks on the internet. This is what we've been selling to you for the last 5 years.
Right.
And like this potential vulnerability now on this other chain that we forked away from, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so now
we have a strong narrative now, right?
Okay,
potentially.
Okay, maybe, right? So let's play this out, right? So that's the narrative, right?
Okay.
So then the boomer guys, they go and look up. It's like, okay, so Bitcoin's about hash rate. Let's see where all the hashing power is going to.
Interesting, yeah.
It's like, well, it's on the monkey picture chain. Well, why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, people are willing to spend money for monkey pictures, and miners need money to pay the bills.
Yes.
Right, and they're going to pick a chain that makes them the most money.
And it's going to appear more secure, right? Because there'll be more of them.
So
more miners participating because there's more money up for grabs, right?
Right. So you're a boomer with like, $25 million and you're looking to secure your money. Like,
dude, fuck 20. Let's talk
100 billion.
There, now we're talking.
Like $250 billion ETF.
You're the boomer of all boomers. You're like the graybeard king, you know?
Yeah.
You're BlackRock.
Yeah, you're BlackRock.
Yeah.
Right. Where are you going to submit, $250 billion worth of money, right? Where are you going to secure it?
That's
where there's more hash power or there's less hash power?
Yeah, man, this is it's starting to get like
it's a no-brainer.
I can see why the Maxis are a little like are very threatened or very like concerned about this because it comes at like the most pivotal inflection moment for Bitcoin's history where we're literally at the cusp of like institutional adoption.
Yeah.
And then like all this shit just kind of like spills in at this perfect storm moment.
This is where I think it's weird because they're going to win anyways. Right? Yeah. It doesn't matter that there's monkey pictures on the chain. Right? ETFs are coming.
Yeah.
And the value of Bitcoin is probably going to go up as a result of these ETFs.
Yeah, for sure. That's the expectation, right? That's the market is
kind
of like piling in under that belief.
And whether there's pictures on the chain or not, like it's still going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, so the battle here is really about ideologies. Like, what is the narrative for Bitcoin? Is it the store of value or is it, I guess, monkey pictures now?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, this is another highlight moment for that invisible hand, dude.
Yeah, that's right.
The market's going to keep marketing like it always does.
Yeah.
And market clearly enjoys JSON.
They do.
They enjoy monkeys.
They do.
They enjoy rocks. They enjoy a lot of things, right? They enjoy
metaverse.
Orange squares.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to continue. I don't think anything's going to really put an end to that. So,
yeah,
the only outcome I can see is a fork. And this has happened before in Bitcoin's past. So, I wouldn't put that outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Just let them try and put out that narrative. But man, it does feel a little disruptive, like overall. Like here we are 15 years or so into Bitcoin's like genesis.
ETF.
Yeah, and like there's still like this much division potentially. I mean, it's probably not even really that much division. It's just like a small, large vocal minority, right? But they probably have a lot of power because they have a lot of Bitcoin and they have like development access, I guess, to these upgrades and such. I don't know. There's got to be like a whole inner workings to this Bitcoin core.
You know what's interesting? We don't really hear like the voices from the miners all that much.
Yeah, until like shit happens.
Yeah, until shit happens.
And then they're like, here we are. We're pissed.
Yeah.
Listen to us or we're going to come screw everything up.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel?
We also built MetaZone, the first app store for the metaverse.
Buy, sell, and explore a new class of digital assets like our flagship game, Rovi.ai.
Support us by collecting your digital assets through MetaZone at metazone.io.
Like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated.
Back to the video. Yeah, Benny said something here that obviously got a lot of traction.
So let's read what Benny says. Luke has been a BTC Maxi cult member from the get-go. What that basically is an option to opt out from executing transactions that have certain sizes or size patterns within scripts and acts purely on client level. It's not a change in Bitcoin itself. If you had decided to turn that on by default, miners and node operators would turn this off again, simply because, in my humble opinion, isn't precise science and could harm miners' income stream, even those not ordinal related. The promised incentive to leave that on won't for sure exceed the incentive to execute ordinals and others. It's literally like saying, hey, I have this new cool update that makes you less money. Please install. Yeah, and so he's right. I mean, it's like if there's a market,
tough sell for sure.
Yeah, if there's a market where each individual transaction value is going up, meaning the miner fees are going up,
yeah,
that's good for the miners, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have an ability to generate more income and therefore expand their hash power and create more security.
Yeah,
and yeah, because dude, it's a war, right? The hash power is a war. If you're not upgrading your hardware, someone else is, and they're going to beat your hash power, and they're going to leave you in the dust.
Yeah.
So it's always a race.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, shit. I mean, this is goddamn. Why is there so much fucking contention in the air? Like in all fronts.
There is a lot of contention, right?
Like lately, we've been talking a lot about like competing ideologies. I guess I don't know. I think that's probably what happens. It's like this. It's like a revolutionary time, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's kind of like spilling out into like even beyond Bitcoin. It's like even just like in culture, there's a lot of like contentious opinions on like how society should kind of like navigate into the future. It's just a lot of contention across the board.
Yeah, I feel
probably like a symptom of the internet or something. It's just everyone has an opinion.
Well, yeah, that, and I feel like the rate of technological expansion and improvement is contributing to our inability to like, stay up to date, and like we're slipping, right? We're starting to lose grip.
Yeah, somebody said that, but I'm sure a lot of people have been saying that. Yeah, it's just the pace of technology and the innovation is just, we never had a chance to really just kind of like take a pause, and actually like definitively make a decision of like direction, right?
Right.
It's kind of like it's bestowed onto us.
I think Elon.
That was probably Elon. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Elon just had an interview just maybe like a week ago where he said, I guess he told advertisers to go fuck themselves, right?
That's right.
Well, in that interview, they asked him about AI, and they asked him whether or not, what's his concern about getting sued with like copyright and AI and all that stuff. And he's like, well, in a couple of years, it's not even going to matter because we're going to have a cyber overlord.
In a couple of years?
Yeah, in a few years. Like he said, like less than 4 years or something like that.
The hell's a cyber overlord?
AI.
I know, but like overlord is very like specific.
Well,
what does that mean?
I think he chose his words specifically.
I know. So like an emperor on Earth that is an artificial intelligence?
Potentially.
Dude, no way. That's too radical. Why would you say that?
Well, he said that it won't matter that we're getting sued.
I know.
Because the cyber overlord is just gonna like,
he's basically saying like we have a couple of years before
we lose control to AI.
Like humans are just obsolete. It's like your laws and your litigation processes will not matter.
Yeah.
In the perspective of a AI overlord.
Yeah, there might not need to be a litigation process. It'll just say is like, yeah, this is.
Imagine that.
Like, yeah.
That's basically God on earth. A source of absolute. Like absolute everything.
Yeah, I guess the issue is it can be biased. But my point here is that the rate of innovation is so beyond our scope of like comprehension that
I agree.
Like things like Elon saying that we're gonna have a cyber overlord, is a problem. Is a problem because we've lost the grip.
I think I think you're right. We're slipping hard. I don't think we can keep up.
And so that's why I feel like that's contributing to our contentious nature on Twitter. Everyone's fighting on Twitter.
Just across the board. Yeah, this is a cultural divide, technology, like ideological period. Just like, we don't know. We don't have a consensus anymore like about ourselves like we used to.
Yeah.
I felt like there was way more of like a unified understanding. It's like what it means to be like part of society, right?
See, you watched the movie Leave the World Behind, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't watched it, definitely watch it. But that little girl, her entire motivation in the movie was to watch the end of Friends.
Yeah.
That was her entire motivation.
Yeah.
And like that was a representation of
a kickback.
A simple-minded version. Like we all grew up like with Friends and like Seinfeld and things like that. Yeah. That was a very wholesome, very basic existence during that time because we weren't inundated with all this like information and technology and all that.
Yeah.
Like you go look and people are sitting and drinking coffee, right, in these shows. But today everybody's like on their phone and laptops and computers and things like that.
Yeah.
And so like we live in like vastly different times, and it's contributing to like this divisive nature.
I totally agree, dude. It's definitely one of the more alarming feelings I get when I wake up every day. It's like, and I try my best not to play into it, but unfortunately, through the nature of our existence, our jobs, our careers, we have to be confronted by it regularly.
Yeah.
AKA, we have to be on Twitter all day long.
Yeah.
Consuming whatever we can. And it's just, I think we've had this conversation before. Probably. It's like somehow Twitter always enters the chat. It's like, God damn it, dude. I really wish Twitter didn't have to exist.
Well, I think it's the town square of like the planet.
It is. It's definitely manifesting as such, right? And we're seeing that. And for sure. Like, I don't know. This is like the process of globalization taking place before our eyes.
Yeah.
There probably has to be like all this contention beforehand. Before like all of human society can kind of like merge into like
finally work together.
Yeah. I was like, first everyone has to like bicker about like how they think the future should end up.
Yeah.
And then like this great war happens and just somebody gets to choose.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is actually where we're going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, true. It's just people just bickering and fighting forever because, opinions never die.
Yeah. It is exhausting. Yeah. Keeping up with all this stuff.
Yeah, so in light of that, I guess it's happening now, even with Bitcoin. But this is a big deal. This is a big ideological shift.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, but so what though? Like, even if it's like, okay, now Bitcoin's about monkey pictures.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. So what?
I don't know. Like, who cares?
Like that whole fucking digital gold thing, like one world currency thing. Like there was definitely
was juice. There was a lot of juice to it.
Yeah, it was all brought about by this anonymous creator, which could be Jesus himself. We don't even know. It's like it could be an alien, so somebody from the future who like felt they needed to save humanity.
Yeah,
you get the like theory craft, and that was the sex appeal of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah,
in the beginning, it's like I remember like somebody in like 2017, 2016, he was like a pastor like down the road or something. They were just having like a random conversation about Bitcoin, and then he was talking to me about like.
You're talking to a pastor about Bitcoin?
Yeah, he came into my old office, and then that was like when I was first getting back into this whole crypto stuff in 2017.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, that Bitcoin thing you're talking about, like, that's like the devil, right? Like, it was like a Revelations prophecy, this one world currency.
Oh, yeah,
thing, remember?
Yeah.
It's like, this is just evidence of end times and stuff. I was like, after that conversation, I was like, damn, if this is really end times, and this is the one world currency, I want to own that.
Yeah.
But it's bullish. Right. Like I want to. If this is actually the manifestation of that,
right?
Fuck yeah, dude, I'm in. But from his perspective, like this is like the most concerning thing.
A signal, yeah.
Yeah. So and then that narrative was very strong, and I think it attracted a lot of people to Bitcoin.
Well, maybe this contentious like nature is inevitable. Like it's persistent no matter what.
Yeah.
Like we might have like an age of abundance and people are still going to be bickering.
Yeah. I mean, this really isn't that radical. It's just change is happening and people are just contending. There's friction in the air. And so this is very natural. This happens literally like every 4 years in America because of our election cycles and such.
Yeah.
Every time somebody new comes in, it's like somebody's proposing change. Every time. And then now everyone's like fucking hates each other for a year.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a natural, again.
Change is an interesting word because, being on Twitter, there's, we follow a bunch of people like from the Ethereum space and they're still talking about Ethereum and like airdrops there and like, old stuff from the last cycle. Yeah,
there's no real contention happening over there.
No.
It's just
it's like largely forgotten. It feels like I could be totally wrong. Like there could be tons of people like still doing innovation stuff and like.
No, there are. I mean, there's a lot being worked. A lot of. I don't know if I would necessarily call it innovation, but like
activity,
expansion, right?
Yeah.
Of that ecosystem, but I think
I feel like the rate of like innovation is happening the fastest on Bitcoin.
Well, out of pure necessity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to happen, has to occur.
Yeah, but I guess people don't look at crypto like we do. Like we like to see like change and updates and new functionalities, right? And so that's why we're attracted to what's happening on Bitcoin. Other than the fact that it's the biggest chain,
Yeah,
and the most liquidity and all that.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, like even though if everything does manifest and gets figured out on Bitcoin, how to create these like new ecosystems and such, like, are we getting anywhere closer to like Web3 overall becoming?
Yeah,
like
that's a great question.
An overall like greater service to humanity's end.
Well, I think ETFs do indicate that is true, right?
Yeah,
there is we're trending towards that direction, right?
mm-hmm.
Because now talking about boomers who hold the majority of the cash right now, they can dump their funds into cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and I guess like a big value unlock from Web3 is DeFi for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Decentralized finance is actually a big fucking deal. Like, because finance is a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And
maybe that is like the big like use case for cryptocurrency. Like it's not anything else besides DeFi.
Well, no, it could be a lot of things, but
for the majority, say the biggest piece of the pie is DeFi.
I think so. I feel like DeFi is the biggest thing that needs to be unlocked. And now that there's potential to kind of like, my big thing is always like experimentation. Yeah. Whatever enables like the scope of experimentation to expand, that is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Just like Bitmap, right? It's like now we have a bigger scope of metaverse experimentation.
Yeah.
More developers working at this grand problem that is the metaverse. Like, how do we actually make this valuable?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like we have DeFi on Ethereum and all these other L1s. Now we're gonna have DeFi on Bitcoin, like the most valuable like digital asset layer on Earth.
That's right.
And now we're gonna have like new developers tinkering and experimenting. How do we create sustainable DeFi mechanisms, leveraging Bitcoin? And that seems like a huge value add. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I
guess to answer that question, we're getting closer.
Yeah, right? I guess in real time when we're in the like thick of it, it seems like it's really slow progress, and it feels like almost no progress. But definitely progress has been made.
There's no way it could be no progress, right?
Well, it could feel that way. At least.
Like at the peak of a bear market, like where you all of a sudden
everything's like collapsing and
everyone was just like, scamming each other the whole time.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It does feel like holy shit, like we're just going in the other direction.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent almost a year kind of like in that mode where it's like, dude, what the hell are we doing?
Right. So I think, this ordinals thing, everything that's happening on Bitcoin, because we don't know what this new, again, expansion of experimentation rate is going to result in. Like, we've already seen some evidence of newness emerge from Bitcoin, right? With Bitmap.
Yeah.
With what we're trying to do with DMT and NATs and stuff. These are new value offerings in the universe, right?
Yeah.
Now we don't know what's going to like actually manifest from it. Like this is like a future determination, but I think it's safe to assume we're going to see more of that, right? Yeah. More newness emerge from this Bitcoin space, right?
Yeah, I think so. Speaking of newness and what the hell are we doing? Let's talk about NATs, dude.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to like segue into that, but I guess it naturally happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we have some like big updates, right, on the horizon.
Yeah, so we've been chatting with Benny, and so Benny's been working hard on indexing NATs and indexing all the elements, and all the non-arbitrary tokens that have been generated by the community. And so I guess the first thing that's going to be like available is going to be the trading of NATs, and that is going to happen at a specific block height with Jubilee.
What is a Jubilee exactly for people?
So if you don't know, Casey Rottenmore is updating the Ordinal wallet, the Ordinal client, and that is the basis for every indexer out there. So every indexer is running the Ordinal client on top of a Bitcoin core.
Yeah.
And that you use that Ordinal client in order to index the different stuff that's happening, right? Mm-hmm. JSON, Maxi Biz, bitmaps, NATs, like the whole gambit of things.
Yeah.
Right. And so But with the Jubilee update, which is I think considered 1.0, this is like the full release of Ordinals, right? We've been in beta phase this whole time, this whole year.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be fully live.
Okay.
And with this update comes new functionalities, right? Parent-child. There's a couple other things.
Metadata, right?
Metadata, yeah.
Meta protocol stuff, yeah.
And creators and developers who are building on top of this Ordinal client can now leverage these new functionalities. And so Benny's waiting for that update in order to release the full indexing API calls for that for people like us, mscribe, to implement on their website.
Okay.
And, people like Magic Eden and things like that.
Any reason why you think like this has been much more like challenging, I guess, for as an indexing
for sure
process? Yeah. Because, we just witnessed CBRC20s come online like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And which is basically like a new spin-off of BRC20, so something that I guess...
Yeah, and they're using 1.0 as well.
Correct. And indexer support, I wouldn't say it's like actually fully fledged out, but...
No, if anything, they're probably not doing indexing, but all the action is happening on their website. And the reason is because CBRC20s is a new protocol that they've come up with, and they had to build an interface for it. Otherwise, only people running Bitcoin Core would have to like be able to do it, right? Yeah, okay. And they would have to create their own interface to like easily do it.
Yeah. So
they knew that wasn't going to happen, so they had to do it themselves. So they created the interface, and now people are minting CBRC20s.
Yeah.
And they're on their website. You can see all the activity because that's the only place the activity is happening.
Correct.
Right. You can't see that activity on Magic Eden or anywhere else because there's no API calls, nothing.
Yeah.
So that's why it's happening there and not happening with NATs. NATs is leveraging existing protocols like TAP, and TAP has to even update their own protocol.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that you could mint NATs on any platform, right? Any platform that does basic text inscriptions, you can do that. Okay. You couldn't do that with CBRC20s.
Yeah.
Because it's on a different part of Bitcoin data.
I see.
CBOR, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why there's a difference between like something that's tradable, like on marketplaces like Magic Eden and eventually mscribe.
Yeah.
Versus something that's a brand new protocol supported by a single website and, doing everything.
So what like UI enhancements or what new features are going to exist on mscribe? Like, because like once this Jubilee happens, like how soon after that do you think like platform support will be there to kind of, I want to see my token balance.
Well, just like I want to. So right now, the 1.0 update, the Jubilee update, you can download it, you can run it yourself. And you can start building on top of it. Mm-hmm. You can do that right now. So that's what Benny is doing. And so in that time, he's going to give us access to APIs. We're going to implement on mscribe. We're going to test a couple of things out, make sure the user experience is good, and this is what people are expecting.
Yeah.
And then by the time that update is live, meaning that specific block height, then like the indexing is like fully recognized, running on live code versus like test code.
Okay.
Right. So
you if you minted NAT tokens and you're waiting for the moment to be able to transfer ownership of them in an open market environment.
Yeah.
You should wait for that Jubilee release.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because the way indexing done has to be done a little bit differently with this Jubilee update.
Yes.
For one reason or another, right? It's different. Like there's implications with indexing before the update and after. There's changes that need to be done. And so instead of supporting it now, a few weeks before the update, and then changing it again after the update, let's just wait for the update, and then it'll be fully ready.
All right. Well, there it is, dude. That's the explanation I guess people have been really wondering about, right?
Yeah.
It's like, when trade,
when
market, right? When marketplace, all that. So mscribe, we have about a 2 to 3 week window, I guess, of development ahead of us where we're going to really prepare for this ecosystem. Yeah. Essentially, it's like an ecosystem launch and with support with TAP.
Yeah. And this is a little bit complex because this meta protocol has like a lot of components, right? There's elements. those elements have implications, right? It's not just a text inscription out of thin air and then like that's it. Like it means something, right? And so that meaning has to be also indexed by track. And what is that meaning? Like, what's an example? Well, you pick a field on Bitcoin's blockchain, you pick a pattern, and then Benny has to go and figure out how many times that pattern exists on the entire blockchain, all 800,000 blocks.
Yeah.
And then he's got to return you a number.
Yes.
Right. That has never been done before.
Right.
Right. These are new things that are being developed, brand new.
And these become like new endpoints, right?
Yeah.
That like platforms can.
That's right.
Now leverage and, to create like the real NAT ownership experience that we expect, right? We want to know the true value of our NATs and the people, new deployers. That's going to take more time as well.
Yeah.
Like for people who want to create their own elements.
Correct.
So yeah, this is definitely complex, and I guess a reason to kind of put out there that expectation. Like there's a lot of new variables to account for, especially on the indexing front.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, this is like data engineering, data mining, like all kinds of stuff. And then we're asking Benny to do this, relatively quickly, like under a couple of weeks.
Yeah, when he already has like so much on his plate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's in development. So yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about this, I think, over the next 2 to 3 weeks leading up to Jubilee. I mean, we talk about a lot of things already, but this is very important because I think there's a lot of people waiting for this ecosystem to come live. And we're apparently getting interest from other ecosystems that want to kind of like, implement these NAT principles.
Yeah, I ended up talking to A from Atomicals, and he just basically said that he's really excited about what we're doing because it makes a ton of sense to him, and that there's many ways that he can implement something like this in a way where you can inject some sort of like GPU mining in order to claim a token.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's very interesting, right? Because then what you could do is you can leverage Bitcoin data and say the early blocks are much easier to mine than the later blocks. And so if you're early enough and you're mining early enough, you're extracting a lot more tokens than you would be later on.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, just like standard Bitcoin.
Pretty much. Isn't that's already like factored into like what Atomicals can do, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the bit work.
Yeah, now exactly.
Yeah.
Now you're just kind of combining the aspects of non-arbitrary tokens with Bitwork.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's just a new vertical of commodities extraction, right? Outside of just like the block drop mechanisms and such. So you add a new methodology of discovery of new digital assets.
Yeah, yeah.
And in this case, it would be Atomicals, right?
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. So it's good to see that there's others interested in implementing this.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole block drop thing is another item of discussion that we're going to be getting into a little bit more, just because I feel like it's so interesting that, like, for example, you can do like BMT block drop, and if people want to inscribe it, it's the only tokens in circulation is what's been inscribed. Like, and everything else, like, even though there's 800,000 blocks, and let's say some percentage is not like inscribed, well, that it doesn't even, those tokens don't even exist.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you have max total supply based on block height, and then you have like circulating supply. It's like what's been inscribed, and then that's really your supply of tokens. It's just what exists.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's cool and can be leveraged in all kinds of ways.
As opposed to
someone minting a ton of tokens,
all right,
and then hoping it gets claimed.
I wonder if there's examples of that out there. There sure are, but I guess we'll refrain from going too deep into these conversations, these examples, right?
Well, I guess we're running out of time, right?
I guess so, dude. But maybe like in a few weeks or so, we'll have more clarity as far as like which of these competing distribution mechanisms that are out there, I don't know, are either more efficient or more safe, more
aligned,
whatever it is. Yeah, because obviously we're seeing new attempts come out.
Yeah,
frequently. So That's ours. The block drop thing.
And then on top of that, anybody can generate, tokens and block drop them to people.
Correct.
Right.
Without actually having to harbor anything or
correct
be custodians of anything of distribution means.
And Bitmap should probably have tons of tokens representing the ecosystem.
Yeah, that is the interesting part. Like, yeah. Is that's probably going to be true. Maybe not Bitmap itself, but yeah, I mean, part of the overall Bitmap ecosystem. I mean, if you think a digital economy is just going to be like some metaverse with one, or none, like 0 or 1 tokens to represent its entire economy. I think you're largely misunderstanding like how complex economics actually works.
It'd be like designing a society where there's like one currency for the whole planet.
Well, not just one, like also like commodity as well, I guess. Like like the markets are very robust and complex. So there's value coming in and out in many different directions within like supply economics. Right?
Yeah.
There's supply and demand economics and all this activity they play together in like a similar arenas and such. They have specific value within specific, I guess, like sectors of need, human need and such in these markets. But overall they play into an umbrella economy, right? So one of them goes down, like for instance, oil, it has like a rift effect on many other commodities and other assets within this economy. Like it's all intertwined, right? It's very complex.
Yeah. Oil goes down and then it's like lithium ion goes up.
Exactly. Stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a lot to consider. And this didn't just manifest overnight like this.
Correct.
The economies that we kind of like take for granted.
Yeah.
that support everything in our society. So yeah, it's safe to assume we're going to need that level of complexity in the metaverse space too. So yeah.
Yeah, and speaking about complexity, we're talking about block drops to a bitmap, but you could do a block drop to any non-arbitrary token, right? Mm-hmm. If you hold a NAT mint, you can do a block drop to that. Mm-hmm. And let's say you want to tap into the NAT holders, you do a block drop to those guys, and see who inscribes your token off of the NAT block itself.
Yeah. Man, you have to like really be a what's it called? A persistent viewer or listener of our channel to understand what the fuck we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
If you just like stumbled onto our podcast or whatever, our YouTube channel today.
Yeah.
You're like listening to this conversation, you're probably like so out.
Yeah.
So out so quick. It's like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
If this is the first time listening to the Block Runner podcast, let us know in the comment section below. This is definitely in audio as well, only like on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but it's also on YouTube. But yeah, if this is your first time listening, you don't know what the hell we're talking about, let us know in the comment section below.
And like, how crazy do we actually sound? Do
we sound crazy? Do we sound like super intelligent?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
What do you think, TJ? Are we like fucking geniuses over here or what?
I think there's a mix.
There's a mix of because you lately you've been back in that like questioning your sanity mode.
Sure, yeah.
You have been, right?
Yeah, I have.
Even though there's been tons of indications of our assumptions they still remain intact.
Yeah.
Right? But still, there's always that like to me. And then whenever you were telling me that, I was like, dude, this is a good sign. Because this is how we always felt like in the past. It's we're dabbling into Decentraland. It's like, dude, are we fucking crazy? Is everyone else like not? And like we're the stupid ones? And then it turned out to be like a great opportunity, right? And then what else? I guess like everything in the past.
Yeah, I guess it's not a great feeling to feel that, I guess.
No, but the feeling that will come later, like whenever you realize like, oh shit, I wasn't crazy. Or maybe you are. Maybe that's like a prerequisite to like actually discovering something of future value.
Yeah.
It's like first you have to be crazy. Right?
Yeah, I guess like electric vehicles was a crazy concept, right?
Yeah.
It was like absolutely crazy.
Or like
and then you're right.
Or thinking, humans can fly one day. You know? We should probably build something
out of metal
and like jump off a cliff with it. It's like that guy's definitely crazy.
Yeah.
And there's probably like a long line of those crazies that like casually or casualties.
Yeah.
But one of them actually took flight, right? Or
I guess the value here is like making sure that if you're thinking of something new, that you're following like the first principles.
What the hell is that? Do you keep saying that?
Man, let's
are you talking about like thermodynamics? Like, what do you mean?
Well, no, it's like
I've heard that from Elon too.
Hold on, let's read it. So, first principle is a basic assumption that cannot be deduced any further. Over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle defined a first principle as the first basis from which a thing is known.
Jeez.
First principles thinking is a fancy way of saying think like a scientist. Scientists don't assume anything.
I still don't get it. What does that mean, dude? So explain to me.
You take it back to it's like its basics. So if like first thing is like, are you breaking the laws of physics? It's like no.
Oh, okay.
It's like does electric vehicles sound like something that's going to be sustainable? It's like, yeah, well, you can get electricity from the sun. It's like, okay. It's like so you basically kind of deduce your thought process to something to a point where you can't like really go back any further. It's like you come up with like electric vehicles, and then it's like, well, are you breaking the laws of physics? It's like, no. It's like, okay, then it's a good idea.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's just breaking down something to its basic form.
Just to make sure it's like a rational thought, I guess.
Yeah.
There's enough rationality present.
And that's what we do on this podcast and like our 20-minute videos is like, okay, there's a new project. It's supporting indexing and like this whole ordinal space. Like, is it really valuable? Like, is this something that's absolutely necessary? It's like, well, yeah, you can't really do ordinals without indexing.
Right.
It's like, well, that means that indexers are valuable in the ecosystem.
Correct.
That's it.
And that's what led us to deduce is like the value of track. Right?
Yeah. We were talking about track when it was 5 cents.
Yeah,
now it's like $5.
Like 300,000 market cap or something. We're like,
yeah.
To try and like slap a thesis of value on something that's worth $300,000, like a new experimental BRC20 coin,
right?
Some new character in the space named Benny, you know, all these things, and trying to, create a reason behind why there's value here.
Yeah,
you have to like.
We did that with BitTensor too.
Yeah,
like, and we've done it Bitmap, another one. It's like we've basically first principles thinking, right?
Okay.
It's like we're breaking it down to its like core value, and if it's addressing a problem, if yes, then yeah, that's something to investigate.
We need to break this down to like a fucking
another podcast, like 1 hour long, like first principles thinking.
No, like a fucking pamphlet or something. I don't know, something people can take home and kind of like whenever you're analyzing a new project or something, it's like here's the checklist of like the block runners first principles or whatever.
Yeah.
First principles thinking. Block runner principles thinking. Yeah. It's like as long as the block principles. As long as it meets all these deductions or whatever.
Yeah.
These parameters of deductive reasoning.
Yeah, and this is a ton of work. I mean, if you're a degen, you're not doing first principles thinking. You're just like
that's
aping.
True.
That's the whole reason why aping exists, is that you don't do any of that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. Well, you can only ape whenever there's like an active market. Like we spend a lot of our time identifying this value before like an active market was even present.
Good point. That's a good point.
It's a lot easier to ape into things like whenever there's
traction and like
track is
volume.
Correct. Volume is like much easier, like low hanging fruit indicators.
Yeah.
That where you could draw deductions from. Right?
That's right.
It's like you don't need to like go back with any.
Yeah. You don't need the fundamentals. You don't need fundamentals at that point.
All you need to do is like, how loud are people talking about this on Twitter?
That's right.
It's like, oh, there's a lot of chatter. I'm in. Yeah. Ape time, right? So there's like different pamphlets.
Yeah, there was no chatter for BitTensor for a large part.
Right.
Literally
none for Bitmap.
None for Bitmap.
Before us, we were like the first ones to even like whisper its name.
Yeah.
You know.
Track. I mean, barely.
Yeah.
And like we get countless others.
Damn. So what's next?
Yeah. So what's next is figuring out other kinds of problems like scalability issues, right?
It's true. I've been wanting to talk about stacks a lot.
And DeFi on Bitcoin, Alex.
I've been getting much more interested in Alex. I actually been dabbling myself with the suite of tools. And it'd be nice if somebody can kind of like ping somebody from Alex or Stacks or somebody.
Yeah.
To come on to our channel
and
to have a discussion with us, because yeah, I mean, we've loved discovering and covering the ordinal space over the last year. It's literally been a year, pretty much, almost.
It has, yeah.
Our channel has like grown double in
2x.
size within like the beginning of this ordinals.
Yeah, and we just crossed a million views total.
Yeah, so it's been great. It's been a great year, but yeah, we kind of want to know, like what's next. And from our perspective, definitely at some point, like, we need more robustness and scalability and, functionality.
Smart contracts.
Yes, we need DeFi, right? Yeah. So we want to talk to the enablers of such, those who are on that mission. How are we going to get there? And right now, sure. Stacks, Alex. If there's like Lightning Labs working on this, now's your time.
Yes.
Come join us and like talk about this stuff with us.
Yeah. So if you guys are inclined, definitely hit us up on Twitter. We'd like to talk with folks, especially innovating in the space. But yeah, that's it for us. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. We talked about a lot of things. And let us know if you have any questions and thoughts in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the next podcast.
Peace.